So welcome again. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good early morning, good late night. We have people at all different time zones. Probably tomorrow we'll have a gist of that. So I'll ask everyone to mute, please, so we don't have background noises apart from the translators. So we are already on third day. So in our journey, this intercultural journey, which actually it's in Lent. So I think it's a beautiful suggestion for Lent to be able to understand ourselves from a cultural point of view, to understand others, to give space, to suspend judgment, to listen. I think it's a beautiful itinerary for Lent. I was in some countries where sometimes it's to stop smoking, well, I don't think we smoke much, but stop smoking, stop drinking, or stop taking sugar in our teas or coffees. And actually, to engage with this intercultural journey, it's a beautiful way of living Lent. So on the first day, we had the interculturality, terminology, and definitions. And yesterday, by the hand of Sister Miriam, we had community living and reconciliation, also through an intercultural lenses. So I would like to invite you to pause for a moment and to bring to heart again what was left for you yesterday. And as we did yesterday, I will ask you to write on the chat. What was that word, that image, that sentence that you recall from yesterday and that you would like to take forward? So before we have our moment of prayer, we can start already looking backwards so that we can move forward. So I invite you to write on the chat what stood out for you yesterday. So listen to understand. In order to understand deeply, we need to listen. Accepting differences. We are all different, and we need to realize that. Forgiveness and reconciliation. So in Korean, a sister says, the importance of listening, diversity, empathy, and language. Those are very important things. Oh, thank you, Sister Emma. Avoiding prejudice because of differences. How easy it's for us to judge people on first sight, and actually we need to go beyond and ask and not judge. So being open to be enriched and challenged, to have more tolerance. We must be intentional when we commit to living interculturality. That is so important. It's not something that often happens spontaneously. We need to think about it, to will it, to have some strategies. The trust, how important it's to try to build trust, and that will enable us to converse in so many different ways. Nurture the ability to wonder, to seek the face of God in others. Yes, the capacity of, instead of being threatened, to be amazed, to say, oh, this is different. This is probably beautiful in some way. Being able to hear and accept each other. Reconciliation is a journey. To appreciate diversity, seeds and weeds. Yeah, thank you for that image. This image of the garden, entering each other's garden with respect, and realize that probably there are things that we don't know, there are plants that we don't recognize, and still there is diversity. There are seeds, and also there are weeds that sometimes need to be understood and journeyed and try to go over them. Reconciliation is the sign of maturity. Yes, we were told yesterday that we can forgive alone, but reconciliation takes at least two people, takes the community. And then as well, some sister highlights the difference between time, the way we deal with time, people that are more task-oriented, people that are more people-oriented, and how that brings difference and diversity. And we need to compromise, to understand the beauty of each side and to try to walk together. And as well, the collective and the individual cultures. So there's a lot there. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mutual appreciation and acceptance with humility. So we need to accept ourselves and then to express as well our appreciation and acceptance of the other. Sometimes the first thing we show, it's what we don't like. We need courage for the dialogue, journeying together to see the face of God in the other. We need to pray about the other person. So thank you so much. And if you want to keep also the chat, you can do that. There are 3 points on the title of the chat. And if you click on those 3 points and you do save chat, then you can also keep the chat and reread it and go over it. Thank you. I think these shows us that we are taking in so many new concepts and as well the desire to live them, that they don't stay only as an idea, but how they challenge us in our own personal path. So thank you so much. So I invite now Adriana, please, to lead us in prayer before we resume. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think with this recap, it was a good preparation for our prayer today. But I invite you again to be silent and to prepare your heart for this new gathering by becoming aware of the presence of God, who through the sharing of the different presentations, questions, experiences, insights, is moving our hearts and kindling our desires, our minds on this personal and communitarian journey towards interculturality. And today's theme, as we know, focuses on the journey of Jesus, our brother and our God. And for this reason, I would like to invite us today to pray with his image. Not a photo of Jesus, but some images that artists of different times and cultures captured of him, to express their faith in the mystery of the incarnation of the Word, the God among us. And as we look at the images, which I'm going to present slowly, I invite you to pray in your hearts by letting the images look at you, speak to you. Let each painting, drawing, or icon of Jesus deliver to us today the good news that Jesus wants us to receive today. Let us pay attention to the colors, the shapes, the clothing, the gestures that each artist chose to give to Jesus according to their own cultural expressions. And as I pray with the images, I invite you to ask yourself, what is appealing to me? And also what challenges me? What speaks to me of this God present in every culture and in every human being without exception?
Adriana, we cannot see the PowerPoint. I don't know what's happening. If you want, I can share from my side and give you the remote control. I think we lost Adriana altogether. So let's wait a moment in silence as Adriana comes back. And if she doesn't come back on time, I will show the PowerPoint. Let's just wait a minute and understand that life brings these things. Okay, so Adriana is back. Adriana, can we hear you?
Hello, am I
Hello,
back?
yes, you are back. These things happen, not to worry, not to worry.
Sorry, yes. I don't know, I was thrown out from Zoom. Okay, let's try. And we are back.
Okay. Yeah, now we can see the program.
Yes, my screen. And let's see now.
You need to
I'm
put it.
trying to start the presentation, but I don't want to rush it. Come on.
Yeah, now.
Okay, good. Okay, so let these images speak to us today in their own particular ways.
Pero kahapon na problema eh. Okay na. Okay na.
Let us honor today the mystery of God's incarnation by inviting all peoples, cultures, and generations to join in as we pray the glory be in our own languages. Glory be to the Father,
Yes, mais
Tino,
Espírito
Espírito
Santo,
Santo,
sing segurança
agora e sempre.
now
e sama
every
and
ever.
Amen.
Amen.
So thank you. Thank you so much, Adriana, for helping us to pray. And the impact was that even with Jesus, we all have different understandings. And that's why exactly God became man, so that God could relate to us in our own language and culture. And I'm sure that if we would ask which image did you prefer, what were the colors, the details that impacted us, which will be all so different. And actually Jesus, it's all that: the resurrection, the cross, the people, the sheep, the sadness, the joy. So all of that was there. Thank you so much.
And I think one of the most beautiful exercises when we pray with these cross-cultural images of Jesus or of Mary is to also to pray with the ones that somehow don't appeal to us, but and see there what that image is telling me, what God is telling me, even there in a way in which even maybe my sensibility is not comfortable. So to pray also with other images that go beyond my own images.
Yeah,
so
and
I think this is a beautiful exercise also. And
yes,
I hope you can enjoy the images when you receive the PowerPoint and do it with more time.
Yeah, and probably in community, if you can, to actually ask, so what is the image? What is the detail, the feature of Jesus that appeals to you? Why not? Because sometimes we can share as well our cross-cultural and intercultural sensitivity also with our faith. So we share both things. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue and try to see some of the questions that appeared yesterday. So I can see here. Here they are.
I think we have, let me see, 4 questions.
Yes.
Yes, there. Excellent.
So I can put them a little bit bigger. So do you want to go in order, Adriana? Or how do you want to do this?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you, yes.
I was gone, but I'm back again.
Is it your internet that it's unstable?
No, I think there is a problem with Zoom.
Okay.
But anyway, we'll hope
Okay.
that it's going to work for the
rest.
Okay, thank you very much, sisters, for the questions. Let us try answering some of them. I would like to begin with the one that says what to do if there are people in community that do not want to walk the intercultural journey. This is a very important question as we go through this workshop, because interculturality is something that we see is very important, is good, but it also takes a personal commitment. So actually it has to be a personal decision, a personal journey, and also a communitarian journey. So of course you cannot force people into interculturality, but at the same time, we may put in place different strategies to encourage people, to inspire the members of our community, so they make this decision and they take this step for themselves. And again, it's a long life journey. So all of us, sometimes we may feel more strong to engage in this journey, and other times we may not feel that strong, and we may need extra help from the other members of our communities. So that's why we need to somehow encourage each other, help each other, so we can continue a process that will last for years. So this balance between a personal commitment, a personal decision, and a plan with strategies that can inspire and encourage members to make this decision and to keep up their decision of becoming an intercultural person, community, and society. So that's the regarding the first question, which is very, very important. We cannot force people. The second question I would like to go to is the one that was presented by the Indonesian group. How do the sisters maintain a balance between maintaining their original cultural values and integrating different cultures in their common life? Again, this is also an important question, because oftentimes I listen to this fear of losing our own culture if we engage in this intercultural journey. First of all, we don't lose our own culture, because it's part of our roots. And even when we lived in societies where there were conquerors that tried to suppress culture, we know that the culture does not disappear. Maybe we were not free to express it, to speak the language, or to use our own symbols, but the culture remained there because it's part of who we are. So we need to overcome this fear of losing our own culture. And interculturality by itself proposes that we engage in this kind of balance. It's not that I have to put aside my culture to get so immersed in the other culture that I lose mine. Just the opposite. I'm invited to contribute with my own culture into this journey. So we, like it was mentioned before in the presentations, we create somehow a new culture where there are elements, the best elements, if we may say it in this way, of each culture. And the balance has to be found by each person, every and each person. But the fear that is usually behind this question is that I may lose my own culture in this journey. And of course, if I had to lose my own culture in this journey, I should be afraid of this. But this is not what interculturality is inviting us to. So we need to find this balance, but to be aware that culture is something that we learn. And as we learned our original culture, we can learn other cultures, and not only one, but so many other cultures. And the more cultures we engaged with, we learned with, the wider our view and our experiences become. So it's an amazing journey. So thank you for this question. And next question. Oh, yes. It says, some congregations are doing the experience of living and ministering in intercongregational communities. This can be also an enriching experience for interculturality and for envisioning a future way of rendering a better service to the peoples. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with this. Engage other congregations on this journey, and especially also there are so many other ways of living out this intercultural kind of mindset, or even search in our lives, that the more differences we engage, the more enriching also the journey will be. And from what I've shared with the other sisters, especially in the Asian context, also interfaith dialogue is interculturality. Interreligious dialogue is interculturality. Intergenerational dialogue is interculturality. So there are so many different aspects by which we can enrich this experience of stepping out from our comfort zone and engaging what is the other for us. So yes, sisters, sharing with other congregations as we are doing together, even living sometimes with other congregations like these projects in order to serve the people, doing our best with the resources that we have, engaging in interfaith dialogue. Yes, all these experiences are part of this amazing intercultural dialogue. And with this, I want to move into the last question here. Are there any best practices you can share in order to start the intercultural and intergenerational process early on in formation? Well, there are many best practices and experiences, and maybe Paula can help me out a bit here. But from what I was thinking and writing down now, first of all, I will say to start, as the question also presented, early on information. Maybe if it is possible for your congregation to form international or intercultural communities, or even to gather people online, or, well, each congregation has to see what means each group has. But one of the best practices is to have international and or intercultural communities from the early stages of formation, and to be intentional about it. Remember, it's just not bringing people together, but to be intentional about this intercultural journey. Also, as it was mentioned before, with other congregations, intercongregational communities, language studies, to encourage language studies from the early stages of formation as well, to train formators who already had the experience of living in another culture. That helps a lot as well. When the formator herself had this experience and love of encountering God in the other culture. Also, I've seen great things with congregations, especially through these UISG programs, that appointed special or particular groups of people to prepare and carry on a program with intentional activities for interculturality. So when you have a group of people who hopefully is passionate about interculturality and is appointed by the congregation to prepare a plan and organize activities as a long-term process, because we are talking about something that, yes, it has to be planned as a long-term journey and not just very sporadic activities. And the last one, but not the least, is to review your charism and spirituality under the light of interculturality. When we look back at our history, our roots as a congregation, I've seen so many congregations that can review and reread their history under the light of interculturality, and we assure you that we always find something, a saying from our founders that encourage us to step out of our comfort zone and look for the other in so many different ways. So that's very important. This is not just a technique, but it has to be a spiritual journey, and that helps a lot for forming the new generations in our specific congregations. I don't know, Paula, maybe I forgot, but these are the best practices that I could think of very quick this morning here.
No, thank you. You were very, very thorough. One thing I would add is to encourage that people can know their own culture. I remember when I joined, I'm Portuguese, and I joined in Spain. And sometimes even at novitiate level, it is a risk sometimes to go into another culture. It needs to be really well accompanied, because we need to discern our own vocation. So finding too many different things, so that needs to be taken into account. And I wasn't told, I knew that we were not the only ones. Portugal, it's a very open mind country in that sense. We are small, so we know that our language is not spoken. But this cultural shock enabled me to, okay, so what is Portuguese culture? How do we go about conflict? What is our own history? So in order to engage and to know other cultures, I need to know my own. So formation needs to foster that knowledge. Is it my culture a collective culture, individual culture? Is it a culture that it's more people-oriented, more task-oriented? So in order to be aware of who I am, self-awareness, then I'll be able also to understand that other cultures work in a different way, and that's not better or worse, but then we will need. And in that sense, to create safe spaces with information that these things can be discussed, not saying that this should be like that. And then as well, from what you're saying, Adriana, to realize what is the culture of the charism, being it the country where the charism was born, or where the founder or foundress was from, and see how that as well pervaded the charism. And as the congregation grows and goes into other countries, how there are still things that will be mainly from that culture, but also others need to change and to grow. And that sometimes is not easy, yeah? So that needs a lot of safe space and dialogue and discernment. So these were the three things I would like to add, Adriana. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think with this, we thank you again, sisters, for the questions, for how you are engaging in this process. And we are ready to move on into our presentation today. And we welcome Paula because she is the presenter. And let me share with you some more details of her life. She already shared that she's originally from Portugal and has been a member of the Verbum Dei Missionary Fraternity since 1990. And she has already been also on the 5 continents, which has molded her personality. Now, as we know, she's at UISG in Rome as the formation coordinator. She finished a master's in systematic theology in the Faculty of Theology from Loyola University in Granada. Before that, she had studied the STB in theology at St. Paul's Verbum Dei Institute in Madrid, and did the master's at the Formators School in Salamanca, which belongs to the Comillas Jesuit University, also in Madrid. Her heart is driven to help people to come to know themselves and to come to know God's love for them. She likes enjoying the big and little things in life. So with these few words, we welcome you, Paula, and thank you for the presentation that you are going to share with us today.
So thank you so much, Adriana. And actually, I'm a little bit mindful that this is the theme that you normally give. So this is your field of study. So feel free.
Forward to it.
Feel free then to add something at the end or whilst we're going. So I will be doing this slowly and giving some time for people as well to realize what's moving in them. And let's see. And there's a lot of content. I'm not going to cover everything because it's impossible, but then I will send you the link to the presentation and then you can go through it again. So we will look today, as we were told before, at the intercultural journey of Jesus. And what I would like to do is to introduce the theme. And what we're going to do today is to look at Jesus' culture. I don't know, thank you, Adriana, for all the images that we saw. Jesus had his own culture. And I don't know if we stop and ponder that and look at Jesus to understand how he lived and how he lived. Nowadays, theologians are rediscovering the Jewish part of Jesus. So we are Christians, but we cannot forget that Jesus was born into a Jewish culture at that moment in time of the history. So we look into that. And we'll try to look as well how being Jewish, being in that specific culture, he also underwent an intercultural journey beyond the limits and the prejudices of his own culture. And we can see that in the gospel, thanks be to God. So we'll be helped by the word of God. And also we will look at the gospel through these intercultural lenses. There are so many questions we can ask the gospel. And according to the questions we ask the gospel, we will receive different answers. And so we'll realize that the gospel also teaches us new paths to walk and to become more intercultural. So that's what I would like to suggest for today. So let's look before at Jesus' cultural background. So we looked at these days, what are the different definitions of culture, the different definitions of interculturality, how we can learn to live interculturally. And one of the realities is that that's being human. So Gaudium et Spes, which is a document from the Second Vatican Council, in number 22 says this: "For by his incarnation, the Son of God has united himself in some fashion with every person." So we believe this. God became man in Jesus. So what does that mean? That he became a man under a culture. And then the text continues. He worked with human hands. He thought with a human mind, acted by human choice, and loved with a human heart. So we cannot be heretic and think, oh, he was only God, or we cannot only think that he was only man. But we believe that as a man, he worked with human hands, he thought with a human mind, he loved and acted with human love and choice. So as we did, he was born as we do. So he was born of the Virgin Mary. He has truly been made one of us, like us, in all things except sin. So there is no way we can exist, and there is no way Jesus could have existed if not in a specific, concrete cultural background, like you and me. So, because he was born into a specific culture and background, he can lead us on this intercultural journey. And only because of that, he can do so. That's the invitation. So, Jesus, how can you teach me this intercultural sensitivity? How can I grow with you in my faith in this intercultural reality? So, Jesus was born into a culture, and therefore he learned the values of his people. He didn't have Portuguese values, allow me to say that. He had Jewish values of that specific culture. He learned to look at the world around him through those lenses, as you and I. So he was given a specific lenses, some specs to look at the world. And we will see some examples later on. He spoke the language of his parents. So theologians normally say that he didn't learn any other languages. He spoke Aramaic. Probably he knew how to read Hebrew, because we are told in the Gospels that he got up to read sometimes in the synagogue, and we know that the texts, the sacred texts, were in Hebrew. So most probably he knew how to read Hebrew, but most probably he didn't speak Greek, he didn't speak Latin or some words, but he didn't speak English, he didn't speak Portuguese, he didn't speak any other languages. So, and you know that a language allows you to see the world in one way or the other. I am very blessed to know different languages, and I realize that if I think in different languages, I have access to different aspects of life. There are words in Portuguese that don't exist in English. There are ways of thinking and saying in English that don't exist in Spanish. And that gives us a perspective over the world in a different way. Well, Jesus spoke Aramaic. he received the history of his ancestors. And we know part of that history. So, and that is so much part of us. And I could give so many examples. For instance, yesterday I was speaking with someone that it's from the Anglo-Saxon world. And because they had the empire a long time ago, sometimes that creates still a way of perceiving the world in one way. Or Portugal and Spain that at some stage divided the world in two sections. That creates in us a way of looking at the world in a way that probably someone that has a different history perceives. Or a country that has been in war for a long time receives that history. So Jesus as well received the history of his ancestors, the chosen people of God, if you want, and that still we can see how that impacts in the reality of Israel, but also a history of being colonized by so many people. So Israel had been under the Assyrians, then under the Egyptians, then under the Persians, then under the Greeks, then under the Romans. So he received all that history, and he received also the promise of God. That framed Jesus' conception of who he was. He identified himself as a Jewish person. And if you want, he knew how to behave with a woman. There was such a difference between men and women. The Jewish people would pray, the Jewish men would pray every day, thank you, Lord, for not making me a woman, and I'm a man. So that's the inheritance that Jesus received. The reality with the children didn't have any value in that reality. He knew that on Sabbath he should not work. He knew all the rules that he was supposed to do and to inherit. He learned how to pray, to cover his head and to recite all these prayers. So all of that we receive as well in our culture in different ways, Jesus received as a young Jew. And for those 30 years, we know very little of his life, but he was immersed into Jewish culture. And he learned to believe in God as the religion taught him. And that's so amazing, because then the God that Jesus was going to show us, probably, and without probably, it's very different from the God that he received. So we can see that Jesus went a long way. And so also we received an image of God from our catechesis, from our cultures, from our own backgrounds, from our families. And we are called as well to go this journey of believing in the God of Jesus. So Jesus followed so many traditions. So I'd like to pause for a moment here, because I've already shared a lot. Just for you to look into this, if you want to remember Jesus in your mind, in your heart, and realize, what do you know about Jesus' culture? What he received from the Jewish culture that you can remember. Just let's pause just for 30 seconds and then we will resume.
Paula, may I
Of course, please
interrupt you? Sisters are telling me, and I can see it myself, that the presentation is not clear. It's blurry.
Okay. Sorry. I was seeing that, but I thought it was only my... There you are.
Yes, I think yes, now. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you so much. I was seeing that, I said, whoa, but then thank you. Sorry for that. This is Zoom culture.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's resume. I'm sure that many things are already coming to your own mind. And also as a mirror, we are perceiving as well our own culture. So let's look a little bit deeper into Jesus' society. So Jesus lived, as we know, at the beginning of the first millennium. Jesus split the time in two. And the society that Jesus lived wasn't at all simple, and it wasn't at all homogeneous. So reading the Gospels, we identify a very diverse society where Jews, Romans, Samaritans, and foreigners lived in the same territory. It will be a long lesson of history and geography of Israel. But I think that's important because geography and history molds our own culture. It's very different to live in a very hot country than it's to live in a very rainy country, for instance. And looking at the geography of Israel, it's really amazing. It's flat on some stages, but it's very hilly on others. So that creates a way of being. So Jesus, from the moment he was born, he was aware that he was a Jew, but there were Romans that had invaded that part of the world, and there were the rulers of that part of the world. There were Samaritans, which before they were Jews, long before, but then they were mixed with the Assyrians, with other cultures. So they were not pure Jews, and they had other habits that the Jews didn't like, mainly religious habits. And we know that from some of the passages in the Gospel. And then there were other people, foreigner people, so from Egypt, from Canaan, from Transjordanian, from Greece. So at that time already there was a lot of movement. And so we can see that there are many foreigners. And there were Jews as well that lived outside of Israel and that they would sometimes come in. So it's not an easy or a one-size-fits-all society. But also within the Jewish belief, there were many groups. So when the Gospels speak of the Jews, mainly the Gospel of John, that speaks very much of the Jews as if they were all together, it's a theological category. Actually, we see in other passages that there were many groups at that time. So we had the Sadducees that were very near the political and the religious authorities at that time. And for instance, they did not believe in the resurrection. Yeah. Then you have the Pharisees that were the ones that thought that to be faithful to God, they had to abide all the rules and all the laws of the Jewish culture. And they came up with 613 laws. So do you imagine? For every moment of the day, for every single thing in life, there was a rule. And we see that in the Gospel, Jesus often challenges that. Then we have the Zealots, which were the ones that were fighting for the independence of Israel by power, by war. So that will be, if you want to call them, the terrorists of that side. And one of the apostles, we are called the Zealot. So Jesus chose one of these to be with him, a close friend. Then we have the scribes, those, as the word says, that would write the word of God. They would interpret, they would teach it to the people. Then you have the Herodians. What does it mean? It means that they were the ones that would support Herod. Herod was a Jew at the time of Jesus. There are various Herods in the history, in the story. But at the time of Jesus, there was this Herod. He was a Jew, but he was, if you want, sold to the foreigner power of Rome. And there were some people that would support him against the ruling of the Jews. So it's very complex. Then you have the Essenes, which is a group that was against all power and against all corruption. So they went to the desert to live religion in a more pure and in a way that would not be intoxicated, contagious, contaminated by all the rules. And then we have many marginalized people because they were poor, because they were shepherds and they didn't abide the law, because they were publicans, because they were sinners, because they were sick, because they were women, because they were widows. So you have a very diverse reality. So before I continue, I would like you to stop as well and to wonder, okay, when I look at Jesus' cultural background, I see so many different groups. What groups would you identify in your own culture? Being it religious groups, being it political groups, being it different ethnic groups, being it different social groups. And you will see that in our own cultures as well, things are very diverse. My mom is from India, so I'm intercultural, I hope, from birth. And I remember when I went to India, and I'm sure that there are many sisters here from India, one of the things that really struck me when I arrived the first time to India was to sit at the airport and realize that there were different groups at work in the airport, according to the color, according to the caste. And it was my first time in India, but I just sat back and appreciated. Okay, so, and that's just an example. I could say the same thing of Portugal, by the color of the skin, by the education. So what are the groups that you find in your own culture? Let's just stop for 30 seconds and I invite you to write down. Okay, so you can continue the exercise in another moment because I'm sure that the list is long, but I think it's important for us to realize that as Jesus was taught to accept and not to accept some of these groups, also we are taught to accept and not to accept. So Jesus, being born into a culture, received the cohesion and protection that a culture gives you, because a culture teaches us how we need to develop ourselves and how we need to go about things in a safe and good way. So culture is there to protect and teach us, but also he learned the prejudices, the divisions, and the discrimination of his own culture. Both things. So we do learn both things as well. Studies tell us that by 7 years of age, when we are already 7, we have learned already what are the prejudices of our own culture. I remember when I was little, because my mum was from India, in a setup of Portugal, my colleagues, my teammates, schoolmates, there were 7 actually, and they would tell me, your mum is black. And in my innocence, I said, no, she's not black, she's brown. But that was already a prejudice. Your mum is different. So Jesus as well learned these things. He learned who is us and who is them. He learned to distrust. He learned the oppression. He learned to oppose, to blame, not to blame. So Jesus learned what was right and what was wrong. And that is so ingrained in us, what is right and what is wrong. And when someone does what is wrong for us, it's really difficult to not be judgmental and not to ask, and not to tell, oh, you shouldn't do that. Well, let's see. He learned who was pure and who was impure. And probably now we've gone over those rules, and sometimes we haven't. Yeah. So we need to see, what do I consider pure and impure in my own culture? He learned who was native and who was foreigner. And that's so ingrained as well in us. I could say so many examples. He learned the ones that were in and the ones that were out. And actually, sometimes in our congregations as well, we have this. We know that they are the ones in this line, they are the ones out this line, they are the ones who think as we do, they are the ones who don't think as we do. So he learned who were the people that were included, and he learned who were the people excluded. For instance, remember the leper that comes to him right at the beginning of the gospel and says to him, if you are willing, please heal me. And Jesus does something amazing. He reaches out to him and says, I want, I will. And Jesus touches him. He could not have done that. He was excluded, and Jesus goes beyond the rules of his time. Jesus knew who were the high people and the low people. And so do we know who are the ones we consider high and the ones we consider low. So he knew who were them and who were us. And we could do that as well in our own cultures. The ones who speak our language, the ones who don't speak our language, the ones who think as I do, the ones who don't think as I do, the ones who have been formed in one way, the ones who have been formed in another way, the ones that are younger, the ones that are older, the ones that have experience, the ones who don't have experience. So I think one of the graces we need to ask God is to understand all these categories that we create in ourselves, and then bring them to Jesus, because he had them as well, and he had to journey beyond that reality. So let's continue. And realize that Jesus, at the beginning, realizes that his mission was mainly towards his own people. And we are told that in the gospel so many times. As I said before, he didn't learn foreign languages. He traveled mainly in Israel, and then he ventured a little bit out. So he went over the Jordan to the west side of Lake of Galilee, and we can see that in the Gospels. I'm going to look at a passage that he goes up to the north of the territory, but he didn't go to many other countries. Matthew tells us that he went to Egypt when he was young, so he was a migrant as well. But mainly, he traveled in Israel. And one of the words he says is that he came to the lost sheep of Israel. So the way he understood his mission, his task, his vocation as the Messiah was mainly for the lost sheep. And during the gospel, we realize that slowly but surely he opens up. And then at the end, he will send the disciples out to the whole world. But that's a huge change. That's a huge change. At some stage, he says to his disciples, do not go into the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So what is this, if not a very monocultural understanding of life, of religion? Even the word Gentiles was a word that, in a way, it's judging. you don't believe what I believe. You are a Gentile. You are not a Jew. So there was a very clear cut of separation in Jesus' mind. But Jesus, perceiving all that, was able to grow out of his ethnocentrism. So this word ethnocentrism, it's another way of saying being monocultural. So centered in his own ethnia. So he was able to grow out of his ethnocentrism and Jewish tradition and grew in an intercultural sensitivity. So he was able to make this choice for God's kingdom. Slowly, he realized that God's kingdom is for all. So even though he had all these exclusion and this separation and these purity laws that were very strict and very strong, he underwent a path of conversion and went beyond these rules. I think this is very important to underline because we all have these patterns in us. And it's really nice and important to look at Jesus and allow Jesus to accompany us. It wasn't easy for him. And that's one of the reasons as well that he, at the end, was killed. Because as we said yesterday, he was countercultural in so many ways. And slowly but surely, that led him to be a threat, to be criticized, and to be marginalized to the point of being murdered, crucified. So Jesus went against many of the rules in his own moment that were not according to God. Because he welcomed the ones that were marginalized, the ones that didn't think accordingly to what they should do. So he welcomed the sick. And being sick at that time, it was not only being sick. Being sick at that time was thought as being cursed by God. You should have done something wrong in order to be sick. And many of the illnesses, because there was no cure and they were contagious, led the sick people to be excluded and to be out of the social reality of life. He touched the children and welcomed them. Now, in many of our cultures, that's normal and that's wanted, and children are a treasure. But at that time, children didn't have rights. Do you remember that the disciples, when the children come to Jesus, just throw them away? Don't touch, don't come. And Jesus says, no, let them come to me, because the kingdom is for such people as children. The women, there are many studies at the moment now about the women in the Bible, and mainly in the New Testament. So Jesus had disciples that were women, and that's written in the gospel, and that was something totally new. So the role of women for Jesus was very different from the role of women at that stage from the Pharisees and other masters. He related with the outcast. He related with the poor ones. So Jesus really integrated a different way of living. So he healed Jews and Gentiles. He related with rich and poor, men and women, children and old people, and even called, as I was saying, women to become disciples. So the question I invite you to ask in your prayer many times, and as you go through the Gospels, is how did Jesus manage to change his monocultural, ethnocentric mentality for an intercultural one? I like very much to ask the hows. How did you do that? Because sometimes we are told what we should be doing or what we should not be doing. But more important than that, it's to learn the hows. How, Jesus, did you manage your journey from exclusion towards inclusion? How did you go from discrimination to equality before God? And I like to ask many questions. So I will not give the answers to these questions because I think they are very personal and in your own relationship with Jesus. So Jesus, in this how, he was challenged himself by foreigners, by women, by the ones that probably were not the ones that belonged. But these challenges, Jesus accepted them, and this relationship with different people led him to think differently. And that's so beautiful, that Jesus allowed himself to be shaped by the relationship with other people. He let go, he moved on, he changed. And I think that's so important. He learned from them. He admired them. Remember this centurion that sent some people to ask him to heal his servant. And when Jesus decides to go to his house, the centurion says, "No, please do not come, because I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof." There's a lot of rules there. But Jesus says, "I've never seen so much faith." So Jesus learned and admired these people that would enrich him, and quotes these people as an example, and allowed himself to be changed by them. So allowed the encounter with others to change him. And that's so important. And as religious women, we are called not to change others, but to allow others to change us so that we can become more like the gospel and God-like. So this is the Jesus cultural background. And I would like now to share with you in the last moments, in the last time we have together here this morning, to look at another passage. And we'll only have time to look at this passage because I don't want to dump you with a lot of content, but then you can look at other passages as well. And I'd like to share you a beautiful passage which is very known, the Canaanite woman. And this is the version of Matthew, and then you have other versions with slightly different nuances. And so this is Matthew 15 from 21 to 28. And I really invite you that in another moment you can read it slowly and pray with it and highlight it and really notice the different details. So it says, Jesus left that place, whichever place he was, and withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. So we already have some information here. It seems that Jesus, when it says withdrew, is that he retired. He wanted to go with his disciples on his own. Probably he didn't want to be known. And I'd like to share with you a little bit the map, because I think it's important. So this is the Israel in the time of Jesus. So here at the north, we have Galilee, and that's mainly where Jesus lived. Then here down near the Red Sea, you have Jerusalem. And when it says that Jesus withdrew to Tyre and Sidon, you can see that it's here top. So he's in foreign land. He is where it says here, Phoenicia. So Tyre here and Sidon. So Jesus was somewhere here. So it's important to know that Jesus was out of his own hometown, of his own rules, of his own culture, as many of us are. And then suddenly out came a Canaanite woman. So again, Canaanite woman, if we go back, this woman was from this side of the world, down here where it says Judea, between Judea and the sea, the Great Sea, the Mediterranean. So these were the Canaanites. And the Canaanites, they had been enemies of Israel. So they were always in war. We could go back to the history of Israel. So being a Canaanite woman already, the gospel is telling us that she was out. She was not a Jew. She was not well looked up on by Jesus. And lo and behold, she comes and starts shouting on the road. I don't know if in your cultures it's normal to shout on the road. When I hear someone shouting on the road, on the streets, I get scared. Must be something strange. In my culture, we don't shout in the streets. And when that happens, probably there is really something really, really wrong happening. So I'm reading this passage from my own culture, from my own lenses. But this is very embarrassing, I suppose, to be walking and having someone behind you shouting at you. And Jesus seems to be in that embarrassment. Well, the disciples are for sure. So what does she shout? Lord, Son of David, take pity on me. This woman speaks Jesus' language, calls him Lord, and appeals to his ancestry. She knows the history of Jesus, because Son of David is to be a son of his people, is to be an heir, of the history of Israel. So she's very intelligent. And she asks him, take pity on me. My daughter is tormented by a devil. That's a very deep petition. It's amazing. What would you do if someone tells you that and you have the power to do something? So the passage puts us on this really central moment. There's a lot of drama going on. So let's not read it very speedily, as sometimes we do. So what is going on in this woman? But look at Jesus' answer. It's really amazing. It's really distressing, I would say. He said not a word in answer to her. So imagine the scene. They are outside of their own country. So is this woman. She goes shouting after him, after them, and he says nothing to her. As if he was deaf. He's indifferent. Actually, we have to say it's a very shocking attitude. We don't know this Jesus. It was not in the images we looked at the beginning. Probably we can include it. Jesus seems to be despising this woman. What's happening here? Jesus is really responding from his monocultural prejudice, reality, as shocking as it can be for us. But I'm glad that these Gospels allow us to have this window into Jesus. So Matthew here wants to teach us something really, really, really big. And the disciples are the ones that respond. Why? Because they're embarrassed, because they are really out of their comfort zone, because they are disturbed. And they don't want to give her what she wants for the sake of her need and the need of her daughter. Look at what they say. Give her what she wants, because she keeps shouting after us. I cannot but laugh a little bit. It smiles just seeing the scene, These men really embarrassed, stop her, just do it whatever she wants. Not because we are good for her, not because we have compassion for her, not because we understand her, but because we are being disturbed. So how many times in our relationship with others, we end up doing what others want because we just don't want to be bothered anymore or to be disturbed, or because it's really difficult to keep the relationship. I think this is a mirror, so good, such a good mirror for our own relationships. And I'm sure that many other things are popping up in your minds. And Jesus stands his ground. Jesus could have given in to her. Jesus could have given in to the disciples. And he's really stubborn. He said in reply, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So in this sentence, we have this clear and direct answer of Jesus, where he is aware that because he is who he is to exclude other cultures from his ministry. How hard is that? How monocultural is that? And how that mirrors as well some of our thoughts. No, I'm not to relate with this person. I know this person is not worthy of what I should do. Oh, this person, we cannot trust this person. I don't know, this culture is not what we need in our congregation. Sorry. So there's a lot there. I see that in my own congregation. Oh, this person is from this country. Oh, we know already what she thinks. So Jesus has all this in him. Jesus had that on him. And it seems to us, or it seems to me, that it's a lack of respect for this person. But Jesus is operating from the culture he was born and from all the values. And he thought as well that God was in that same wavelength. So let's see what happens. The woman, thanks be to God, and I really think it's thanks be to God, was very clever, was very intercultural, was in need, and was able to stand her ground in a very respectful way. Look at all the verbs and the way she speaks. But the woman came up. So the woman at this stage, she could have turned around and say, who do you think you are? You are just marginalizing me. You can do this, and you just holding to all this Jewish nonsense. But she doesn't say that, even though probably she thought or she felt really not welcomed because it was blatant. But she continues. She doesn't give up the intercultural dialogue. It's really amazing. It really emotions me. She comes up, so she caught up with them, even though they are telling her to shut up or not to continue. Well, didn't tell her anything, but she could understand the reality. And she overheard Jesus saying that he had not come to the lost sheep. So she comes closer. And I think it's very important in the intercultural journey to come closer. She doesn't go away. She keeps coming closer. And that's so difficult when you feel that you're not part, when you hear words against you. It's really amazing. I find that we need really to stop and ask the grace that this woman had. And not only she comes closer, she bows down. She bows low before him. Again, it's probably an expression and a behavior that we are not used to in our own cultures, or probably in yours there is, not in mine. So I find this gesture really amazing. So she shows respect. She shows reverence. She probably goes beyond her own rules. We don't know. And again, she says again, Lord, she said, help me. So she knows she's in need. And that need takes her beyond her own prejudices and her own hurt. So how many women we know as well that are in need, and that they can teach us as well to go beyond our discomfort and continue. So that still shows us how Jesus didn't react. How did Jesus continue not to go beyond? Because Jesus says, it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the little dogs. Well, by then I think I would have given up. And I said, this guy, it's really tough. It's not the guy I thought could help me. It's really amazing. If we would stop here the passage, if we just press pause, what would have happened? Wow. Theologians are still studying this sentence. Some of them subdue it in one way or the other. Anyhow, it's really tough. it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the little dogs. So Jesus is calling her, you are a different race. You are like dogs. You're not children. Even though it seems other studies that in that culture, in Tyre and Sidon, dogs were already mascots and they were welcomed in the house. There's different things. But again, how can you say you're not going to help her because you're not a child, you're a dog? Jesus is very harsh. And I don't think we have to make this little than what it is. So Jesus was responding from his religion. And again, this woman stands her ground. It's amazing. She responds again. She doesn't say, but why are you calling me a dog? Or why are you doing this? Don't you realize you are just humiliating me? And that's often our own response, which is licit and has its place. But she's able to go beyond. I think she was really a graced woman. And she was in need. And she had a great love for her child. And she said, yes, Lord. But even little dogs eat the scraps that fall from their master's table. That's an amazing interreligious dialogue. It's a very tough one. I don't think we have to engage in these kind of names and things. But this woman is able to stay. She teaches us how a dialogue can be brought forward. So she takes Jesus' own words and gives them a different meaning. And using what he tells her, brings him back and says, but you still can do this. Then Jesus answered her, woman, you have great faith. Let your desire be done, be granted. So see how Jesus changed? It's amazing. It is really amazing how Jesus, before not even saying woman, now he welcomes this woman and calls her for who she is. You are a woman. You're not a dog. You're a woman. And Jesus blesses her great faith and gives her what she wants, she's asking for, what she needs. And from that moment, her daughter was well again. Yeah, there's so much still to be said, but I think we need to stop here and realize how Jesus realized that he had to change. And from that moment onwards, the Gospels tell us in a different way that Jesus opened to the ministry to the Gentiles, as he said. So then the next multiplication of the breads and loaves, there will be non-Jews there. Jesus will reach out now to other people. So this woman, this passage is called the conversion of Jesus. And this woman is the only woman in the gospel that argues with Jesus and wins. And it's beautiful. She's a woman, she's a mother, and she enabled Jesus' intercultural journey. So there is so much that can be said. But as time goes, I would like to ask you this question. If I'm in a powerful position, as Jesus was, how do I open myself to this reality? But sometimes we can think that intercultural journey, it's only about the ones that have power to decide. Well, actually, this woman didn't have the power to decide, and still she created an intercultural journey. So often as well, the ones who don't have the power, we can play the victim role. But this woman didn't. So even when I don't have the power in this situation, how do I foster? How do I open myself to this intercultural journey? So I think this is important to highlight from this passage. And then what I would like to leave for the question afterwards, but we'll do that afterwards, and for the sharing, is how does this reading shed light on your intercultural journey? So I will stop here. Sorry for taking so long, Adriana. So please, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Paula. I think it's an amazing text, and thank you for the way that you presented it. I think we could feel that we were there with Jesus and the Canaanite woman, and surrounded by Jesus's culture and struggles, and also this amazing experience, no, of being challenged by this woman and opening up to himself up to God's dream there, and changing his living his comfort zone. So thank you so much for this, and I loved this passage, and yes, we could talk for hours about it. So thank you very much again. And shall we do it the poll now, or the Q&A?
I think we can do the Q&A because Gianluca is busy in another meeting. So this time we'll do the poll at the beginning after the break, if that's all right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just being aware of that. So sisters, I can see so many words of appreciation here in the chat, but now we have some time for a Q&A, and maybe if there is anything that really touched your heart, any reactions that you could that you would like to share with the group, or any question that you may have. So
Adriana, sorry, Gianluca just
yes.
texted me saying that we can do the poll because he's with us already. So sorry to interrupt. So we can think the questions, and at the same time, Gianluca, thank you. If you want to do the poll, that will make our life easier. Sorry.
So as we do the poll, take time to see if you have any question or any thought that you would like to share with the group. So I think you can see in the screen the poll, and you know that you need to answer. Choose a language group in which you would like to share today. You also have the option of no group at the end in case you are with others. Elizabeth, she's asking you, Paula, to elaborate more about this incident with the Canaanite woman introducing Jesus onto his own intercultural journey. She says, this is something new for me.
Okay. Well, I'll share something, and then Adriana, as you know so much about this as well. So as I was saying before, Jesus in his own Jewish culture had all these rules: the foreigners, the non-foreigners, the women, the men. And he grew in this awareness that he was a Jew, and the promise was only for the Jews, even though the promise of God was only for the Jews, even though there were some passages in the Old Testament that open to other nations and cultures. But as well, Matthew's gospel, Matthew, it seems that writes mainly for Jewish communities, so Christians that were coming from a Jewish background. So he needs to deal as well with all the openness of these Jewish communities to the outside world. So that's what we have here bubbling behind these gospel. So what Matthew wants to show us is that Jesus, being a Jew, opens slowly but surely to a different concept of culture, to a different concept that God, the Jewish religion, needs to open, and that's what we call Christianity. We are not Jews anymore. Needs to open to everyone, to every single person, in such a way that Matthew's gospel will finish with Matthew 28 saying, "Go out to the whole world and baptized all nations." So that's a huge change from a Jewish perspective to a universal perspective. And what Matthew and this gospel wants to show us is that the own struggle of Jesus, that probably wasn't only in this moment, was an ongoing struggle. And we see that as well in the Acts of the Apostles then with the early church, which will be the video for after if you want to look at it. So there's lots of layers going there. So Jesus goes beyond the rules of religion, the rules of gender, the rules of nation, the rules of so many things, and he goes beyond. Adriana, if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I think really one of the sisters here, well, everybody is thanking you, of course, and appreciating the way in which you delivered this even meditation. One of the sisters says here that she felt that she was on a retreat. So yes, I think it's a passage to really contemplate, and it helps us a lot with our own struggles. I see here that we can really feel how this intercultural journey is a countercultural decision, and I think this passage, as you said, maybe there were so many others experiences that Jesus had on how to overcome this ethnocentrism, but this passage captures the experience that we also have so well of being challenged by the other. It's a way of yes, because I think you explained it so well. For the Jews, salvation or the feeling of being the chosen people was very, very strong. And that's what we call ethnocentrism. When we put our culture in the center, and then we look at the others from that perspective. And here in this passage, it's so well captured how Jesus realized, like, but this is not aligned with God's dream, with God's kingdom, because God is for everyone. Everyone is a children of God. So this very strong feeling of being the chosen people at one point of the journey of the Jewish people was very helpful, because it helped us to be faithful, to remain faithful to their own faith. But the time had come to open this up. So it's the same with us. First, we need to be strong in our own culture, because if we don't love our own culture and we are not faithful to our own beliefs, then we cannot open ourselves up to others. But in this passage, we can see that there is a stage where our culture is keeping us closed in our own viewpoints. And God is far beyond that. So it's kind of part of this process of this becoming more mature in our spiritual journey. But I know that this is a very challenging way of looking at Jesus. Sometimes in some places, sisters or brothers, priests will say, no, we cannot talk about Jesus' conversion. He was the Son of God. Yes, it's true, but he was also the Son of Man. And that's what we are looking at. How Jesus, as a fully human being, had also to overcome his own ethnocentrism so he could align himself with God's dream. So thank you very much. There is here another question. I don't know, this is in Spanish. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Sister. This is my first time to hear it under this slide. Then there is a question. When you are in a different culture and that culture is difficult to be open to different opinions, especially when we speak about mission. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't get the question really.
I think it's when what I understand is that
Yes.
sometimes you are in a different culture, and the way the sisters in that culture do mission, it's one way. And when another culture comes and says, "Oh, we could do things differently," there's like a resistance to do that. Yeah, that's a huge challenge. I think it comes as well from this perspective as well in the church before, that when you go to another culture, you need to enculturate. And that's important, yeah. Because I think we've gone through different stages in the church. So before we had this colonialism where you would go and impose your own culture onto the new cultures, thinking that they need to change and their cultures don't have any value. So we went beyond that, I hope. So all cultures have richness. But then when I joined, the idea was that if I am Portuguese and I go into Spain, I need to enculturate or acculturate. The words have changed as well, meaning that I need to learn the values of the new culture I am and somehow probably leave behind my own culture and my own values to try to understand and embrace the new culture. That as well, it has its pros and cons, as much as it's impossible to do that. But then now I think we're getting into a different understanding, which is the concept and the reality of interculturation. It is true that when we arrive to a new culture, we need to learn and embrace novelty, but that doesn't mean that I need to leave behind my own culture totally. So, as we were saying yesterday, we need to dialogue, because there's things in both cultures that are according to the gospel and not according to the gospel. And all cultures need to grow. So, for instance, if my culture in Portugal, we are not so direct, so we will never say things directly. But sometimes that's good, and sometimes that needs to grow and needs to be more yes, yes, no, no, as the gospel tells us. So if sister comes to my own country and brings newness, probably as a native as well, I need to open up to different ways of doing that. But sometimes we had what I call in my community the classic way of doing the charisma, the classic way of doing mission, as if there would be no other ways. So that takes a lot of effort, a lot of openness, a lot of intentionality, a lot of going beyond that slide that I said, this is right, this is wrong. I think that sometimes, and forgive me if I'm wrong, in consecrated life, we are taught this is right, this is wrong, and we get stuck there. And from those lenses, we read everything. So if evangelization 10 years ago, it was in one way, now can be done in another way. Like today, I've put the PowerPoint here on my side, and that's new for some people. Probably for some others, it's like, oh, what? She's doing that. She should do the old way of sharing the screen, whatever. So it is not easy, because sometimes we are not even aware that we are doing that. Yeah. In this country, you don't do that. And you just think, why not? Okay, could we try? So some of the sentences, I think the question goes through here. I hope I responded a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. There is one more question here. She says, I'm a little bit curious about the personality of the Canaanites, that they are idolaters, superstitious, indecent, and evil. And my question is, how does the dialogue between Jesus and the Canaanite woman reflect the dynamics of communication between cultures and differences in faith and even gender? Thank you for this interesting question.
Wow, it's really amazing question.
Yeah.
And thank you. And thank you, because the question, I can say Sister Siska is doing that. Thank you. Already reflects exactly what was in the mind of Jesus. So when he hears this woman speaking, probably by the accent, yeah, here I am in Italy now, and one of the things I'm learning, it's the different accents. So sometimes I'm asked, do you know where this person is from? And I can say, yes, she's from the north. Yes, she's from the south. And we know that already, or when I hear a Brazilian people speaking, they speak Portuguese, but straight away I realize, oh, she's from Brazil. Or when I went to a mass the other day at the Portuguese church, and there were all these African countries that speak Portuguese, because we were celebrating, we're praying for the Pope as Portuguese speaking people. And I could say, oh, this is from Africa, this is from Brazil. So when this woman shouted, Jesus immediately could sense her accent. And you've put here the words, and probably what came to Jesus' mind was, she's an idolater, she's a superstitious, she's an innocent, she's an evil person. So nothing to do with her. So those were the dynamics of communication that were there. Jesus had all that surfacing, probably not even being aware. So Jesus had to become aware. But this woman as well probably had also her prejudices with Jesus. The Jewish are arrogant. They think they are the chosen people. We fought so many times. Remember the fight between David and Goliath? That's in Cana. So Goliath was one of the Canaanites. So there had been enemies for a long time. So what I understand is that the dynamics of communication, we need to surface all the prejudices and all the thinkings and all the feelings, because there are emotions that come to us when the other person is in touch with us. When I speak with a homeless on the street, I already have my prejudices. Oh, this person is going to harm me. This person's smell puts me off. So, and this woman is able to go beyond that, finds ways to dialogue. Everything seems very spontaneous, but these things need a lot of practice, need a lot of intentional thinking, prayer. So I tried this, it doesn't work. How can I approach this person? What's the meaning of this word in this language? If I use it, I know it's not easy. So I would say that would go through that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. There is also beautiful insights shared in the chat here from the sisters. Sister Amabel says, I remember hearing some commentaries that this particular incident in Jesus's life was among one of his conversions or only conversion noted of Jesus, a cultural conversion. And that happened with his encounter with a woman, a Canaanite even. And this revealed to us the important role of women as sign of the times from history to the present. Thank you. thank you for sharing this insight with us.
And as we know as well, men and women will not speak in public, at least on their own, so that this woman takes the initiative as well. She goes against the rules of the time. Yeah, thank you.
She's very countercultural. Sister Lorena says, let us remember that at the beginning of the small Christian communities, were thinking the message of Jesus was only for Jewish communities. After the Pentecost incident, the community became aware of how this message was an universal message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yes.
the video that we have this afternoon, where Adriana speaks at the beginning, so you can listen as well to Adriana, and then to Roger. They speak about the intercultural journey of Jesus, and then the intercultural journey of the church, and Saint Paul as well. It's one of the main protagonists of the openness of the Jewish communities into Christian communities that are cross-cultural, multicultural.
Mm-hmm. And as we will see here, if you listen to Roger's Schroeder's presentation, it's not a linear movement. It's not that the church at Pentecost really decided that or opened up to all cultures. The church did it, but then later on went back, and then something happened, and again they journeyed to our interculturality. So we can see also in our lives that it's more kind of a circular movement, and that we have to make this decision and live up to this call every day again. So it's not a one-time decision. We need to revisit our prejudices and God's dream very often, so we can really grow in this interculturality mindset. Oh, there are so many
questions, but I think we need to rest.
Yes. I think we need to really yes, to take our break, but I encourage you to, I mean, all the sisters to go through this through the chat and read everyone's comments and questions. So then we could go deeper and deeper into this passage, because we could speak for hours here about it. So Paula, how should we manage our time now?
It's 10:31, so I suggest we do have our break at least 15 or 20 minutes, as you wish.
Thank you. Sister Paula, I'll be excused for a while because I had the mass at 6 o'clock. So I exit. Thank you. Thank you.
¿No me escuchas? Buenos días. ¿Qué tal? Entonces, ¿ocupada la mañana?
suggest you think and ponder and then share is, if I am in a powerful position like Jesus, how do I open myself to interculturality? And then the second one is, if I am in a non-powerful position like the woman, how do I open myself also to interculturality? And then the third question that draws from these two is, how does this reading shed light on your intercultural journey? So I invite you to stop for a moment and to ponder these questions. I'm sure that they've all already been coming to you throughout the presentation, and then we will send you into groups. And you have the questions translated on the chat.
Sister, cannot be seen the third part. The number 3 question, sister. Ayan.
Indeed, indeed.
Yes, sister. One of our friends just joined the group.
Yeah, this is a cultural difficulty because some cultures need less time, others need more time. So in the between. Yeah, but Asians, there's a lot of difference. Different.
Know that some groups need more time and that not everything can be repeated here. But again, it's a different way of enriching each other. So let us pay attention to what the secretaries prepared to share with us, and we are going to follow this order. First, I'm going to call an English speaking group. Second place, Vietnamese speaking group. Third place, Indonesian. And fourth place, Korean. So the secretaries, be ready, especially the ones that haven't talked yet. And be aware that since we are changing languages, we need to change maybe the channel in which we are listening to. But we want to listen to each language. So, and then we change according to the translation that we need in the with the interpretation button. So let's go for it. Be brief so we can respect the time. We have 15 minutes to share 4 groups. So first, I'm calling an English group secretary. Please raise your hand.
It's me. I'm Sister Genevieve, and hello, everyone. Thank you, Sister Flaviana. You are really true to your words. She really volunteered me to speak here in this plan. Anyway, for our group, if we are in a powerful position, we are being called to be compassionate just like Jesus and to step out of our own culture so that we can arrive at an understanding of the others, and as well as that we are able to be open and humble enough to bend rules, in which most of the time those who are in the position are the ones creating rules, but it is a challenge on our part to bend the rules also and to stoop down to meet at the level of those you are trying to minister or accompany and journey with. And it is really a practice of humility, mercy, generosity in going beyond our own way of thinking, and as well as to engage, to have that active engagement so that we can be more honest, sincere, not sticking with our own culture or what not our own culture has taught us, but to listen, just like Jesus, to listen as what one of our sisters also realized towards the end of our sharing that it's like if Jesus hasn't given availability to that Canaanite woman, she will not be able to understand and meet that Canaanite woman in the same way that this Canaanite woman also trusted and given her faith to Jesus. They will not be able to meet at a certain point. And if we are on a non-powerful position, it is a call for us to remain simple, open, honest, sincere, and truthful about ourselves. Also to not make any prejudices, no negative thinking, but is always seeking what is good for the others. And also to learn also to process ourselves and also to have that empathy, respect for the others. That's it, sisters. Thank you.
I will speak in Vietnamese. Dạ,
Tôi sẽ nói bằng tiếng Việt.
dạ vâng. Tại vì em ở nhóm tiếng Việt đó, cho nên em sẽ nói
I
tiếng Việt.
belong to Vietnamese, so I can speak Vietnamese.
Dạ. Cái câu hỏi chúng em không có đi từng câu hỏi đó, nhưng mà
We don't go at each
đi hai
question,
câu hỏi cùng với nhau đó, tại
but
bởi
we
vì
go
nó
together
nó
two
chỉ
questions
đổi
at the
vai
same
thôi.
time,
Dạ vâng.
because it only changed the role.
Dạ, chúng em có một điểm đó là cái nội
There's
quyền đó.
one thing that is the
Mỗi
power.
người đều có cái nội quyền. Chúa
Everybody
Giêsu có
have
cái
the
nội quyền
inner
và
power,
cái người phụ nữ này cũng
and
có
the
nội
woman
quyền.
also have her
Nhưng
inner
mà bởi
power.
vì họ gặp được nhau và
Because
họ rất là chân thành với
Jesus
nhau,
and
họ
the
trao đổi với nhau,
woman
mặc
meet
dù
each
là cái ngôn
other,
ngữ nghe
and they
nó
change.
có thể là nó hơi chói tai một chút, nhưng mà
Even though the language
thành
is a little bit
cái thành thực
harsh,
đã
but
lưu họ
there's
lại và họ
sincerity
đã
there,
chia
and
sẻ
they
chân thành.
share
Và
with
nếu
each
còn một
other
điểm nữa,
sincerely.
đó là
Another
cái lòng
point
tin
is
tưởng,
if the
cái
trust,
nơi chốn nó an toàn cho
if
cái người nữ
at
này,
the
cho
same
cái người
place
đàn bà
for
này họ chia
the
sẻ.
woman to
Dạ.
share her
cái lòng
opinion,
tin tưởng
the
và ở
trust that
trong môi trường
she
sống
have
cũng
in
vậy.
Jesus.
Nếu mà người trên có
If
cái quyền và người dưới
the one who have
được
power
tin tưởng, được mến yêu,
and
thì cái
others
sự mà
feel that
họ
she
chia sẻ,
feel
họ
loved
thành thực,
and
nó
trust,
có thể rất
and
là
then
dễ
she
dàng.
can open with sincerely to share her opinion.
Dạ, và cái điểm thứ ba đó
The
là
third point
cái
is
cái ý là rất là để mình có thể giống như
in
Chúa Giêsu
order to be
là
able
mình
to
để
like
cho
Jesus,
đối phương ảnh hưởng đến mình và
to
có
let
thể
other to
chuyển đổi cái ý tưởng của mình Dạ, chuyển
So
đổi
let's
cái
ask the two
khuynh hướng
challenge
của mình
us
thì đó là
and
một trong
change
những cái
us.
thách đố
That
mà
is
ở
one of
nhóm
the challenge
chị em
that
đưa ra.
we found
Rồi
in
cái
our
thứ
group.
dạ cái cuối cùng đó là
Finally,
qua cái buổi học này,
through
việc học
this
này
session,
thì nó sẽ giúp cho mình để mình
help
tỉnh
us
táo,
to be
tỉnh
aware
để mình có thể sâu chuỗi lại những cái tiến trình mình đã kinh nghiệm đã sống đi qua để mình có kiện
to
toàn
remember, to recall
be
our
more
experience that we have experienced in our life.
yeah. So đó là cái và cái cuối cùng đó là trong cái thông điệp của những cái buổi học đó là
In the
biết
message
mình cái
we
thách đố
received today
là cái biết
in
mình, cái biết
we
mình
know
của mình hay
ourselves,
quá để mình có thể tương
know
tác.
our
Xin hết.
culture,
Yeah.
and that we can interact with other cultures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sister, for sharing with us, and thank you for the groups that the secretaries are representing or bringing their voice from. And now I'm calling an Indonesian speaking group. Please, one of the secretaries who can share with us in Indonesian. So we can learn from their insights, their viewpoints. So when the sisters in Indonesian, please unmute yourself. And then the Korean secretaries, get ready. So but now one of the sisters in Indonesian, please take courage. Yes, Sister Ursula, please unmute yourself and share with us.
Okay, thank you so much. From our group in English Indonesian speaking. So if I have like power, what should I do in the society and in my everyday life? So as someone that with power, we need to open ourselves, like not to close ourselves to see what is in our surroundings, and then how we need to be objective, so not to put prejudices, because in Indonesia, if you are a sister, because it's a variety from the east to the north, for example, from in my congregation, there is one from Flores, from Kalimantan, from Java, from China. So we need to not put prejudices, and also we need to be also very humble, and how we are friends and we can share, not to be like the authority figure that we see them as someone below us. So we don't use our power that I am the leader, so I have more power, because this will be to their disadvantage. And so we also need to be able to learn how to communicate with their languages. So, for example, their languages in their local place, so that we can really enter into our ministry, and we can really be there, like like presence there. So basically, as a authority figure, we need to learn how to be humble and how to grow in this loving culture. So we don't like force our power upon them, but we're going to grow together in this culture of love. So that when we have this culture of love, then we can learn everything like Jesus. So when we are in the weaker position, like the Canaanite woman, so as the one that is weaker, in the weaker position, so we don't have to stop at one point, but we need to adjust ourselves, how do we need to learn also the other cultures so that we can live with them, and how we need to be open, not to be just close in ourselves. Because even though we are weaker, but we are not stagnant in our weaknesses, but we need to get up and learn other things, new things. This is what we need to learn. And we need to also appreciate the local cultures. Even though we are in the weaker position, we need to learn what in their cultures. And for example, what will be the dream of our congregation uh, is how we can really live in the local culture. And also in that reading, what we see, like the attitudes of the Canaanite woman, even though she's on the weaker position, but we have faith that to we need to be we need to see that in everything that we live, that even though if it's like challenges or difficulties in every culture, but with our faith in God, um, we can really fight it, because the diversity was already present from Jesus' time. And that we need to see in every single event, there will be always like a meaning. There will When we have like faith, we would be able to face that. So we need to also increase in our spiritual life, like going to retreat and pray more, so that we have always more hope, like this woman. So like she doesn't stop, and then she look at herself to be a victim, but that we can get up and we can have hope that everything has its time, and that we can always be better. That we have to be open, we need to be more mature, and then we need to hope that everything will be good in God's time, and we need to entrust ourselves to Him. And just like the Canaanite woman has hope, and he can get up and she can also walk with the others. So how we can be able to face all the challenges, and how as women, like we are in women, we are always second place as women, but how we can get up and we can stay in all the challenges of life. And so first we try to do it from ourselves, and then how we can then open up to the others. So this is what we have been sharing in our group, and how we have to see everything with faith. So thank you.
Thank you, Sister
Okay,
Ursula.
terima kasih, Sister Ursula.
Kasih. And thank you to the group that she's representing. So now I'm calling for a Korean speaking group. Please, one of the secretaries that could speak in Korean for us and share. Oh yes, we have her already in the spotlight. I don't know how to pronounce your name. So,
Yun
okay, Sister Ji-yoon, or something like that. Sorry. Over to you.
To the first question, the most important thing is waiting. When I have the power, I wait for the sister and trust her, and until she opens up. It's important to wait for her. And to the second question, there is a victim role. But you have to break out of your own self and then move forward. Yeah, the trusting in God is most important. To the third question, listening to the presentation of Sister Paula, we realized that Jesus was stuck in his own culture too, also in his body, physical presence. So yeah. That gave us courage that we can also change, like Jesus has changed himself. So we were, it was very empathetic, you know, even though he was bothering, the woman was bothering him, but that made us, you know, reflect ourselves. Like in the gospel message, the Canaanite women, with the strong will and humility, we can, you know, move forward to Jesus with courage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much to you and to the group that you represented. So, sisters, thank you again for this time and for all the insights and wisdom that we have shared from the presentation from Sister Paula. And before we close this gathering, we encourage you to maybe, if you have the possibility, to stay with it with this Bible scripture and really think if you have any further question, any further insight that you would like to share, if you have time to watch the video and continue this topic through Roger Schroeder's presentation about the early church and the church intercultural journey. And then please go to the Padlet and try to see if there is any question that could help us to develop and go deeper into all these topics, because this opportunity of coming together in such a multicultural and intercultural group is unique. So thank you very much once again, and I give it over to you, Paula, for any last remarks.
You said it all, so it's about to say goodbye, and tomorrow we'll meet here again. All the best. Good night, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank
You
you.
can open your mic.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. 엠마 수녀님.
Terima kasih.
Bye.
Hello, God bless.
आप किसी को फोन कर
Bye.
रहने दे, चलो आएगा तो मैं कहूंगी अभी रहने, सीढ़ी रखवा दूंगी अंदर वाले को, चिकन वाले को अंदर नहीं आने देंगे हमारे घर
Tanggapi.
Yes.
Salamat po.
को पता है हम कौन से बड़े
Yes.
हर दफा वो
Good to
नाम ही
see
आता है
you.
तो
Bye.
निकाल के रोज चले ठीक है
Bye.
बेला ने
Kamsahamnida.
Tomorrow. All the
Bye,
best.
depend है
Bye
मदर
bye.
मैं ना मीटिंग में हूँ दरअसल, ऑनलाइन मीटिंग पे। हाँ
Bye.
मैंने देख ले जो भी कर